Hi, I'm Mercedes Kilmer. Thank you so much for watching. Welcome to Shipping Presents in Transit, a fundraiser for Trans Lifeline, which is an incredible organization that offers peer support, crisis hotline, micro grants, and other services for the trans community. And stick around to see my interview with the lovely Bree Barnett, as they have a lot more information about that. And you can go to their website as well at translifeline.org or click the link below for more info or to see where to donate. First up, we have an interview with Chi Ossé, who is running for New York's 36th District City Council seat. And stay tuned for the rest of the acts after that. And thank you so much.
District City Council. This is part of the shipping festival to benefit Trans Lifeline. So check the link below and donate if you can right now. Yeah, hi, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you so much for having me. How are you?
I'm good. I'm really excited to be talking to you. Huge fan of everything that you're doing. I don't know if fan is the right word.
Supporter.
I've been following you around, walking 80 miles the last.
Thank you for doing that. I hope your calves are firm.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm really glad to be, able to be present and see this revolution happening, and be part of it in whatever way I can. So let's get right into it, I guess.
100%.
So the first thing I wanted to ask you, because, you've been out on the street a lot, you've been working for the city council run. What is wrong with de Blasio and Commissioner Shea? And they seem just like the whole city they're a mess.
I mean, where do I start? I mean, the reason why I jumped into this race is when I did my research, I started to follow paper trails, and I started to notice where money was going, especially when it came to elected officials, as well as our NYPD department and Commissioner Shea's pension in general. When you follow that money, which is public record, you just have to dive in and take a look at it. You see that a lot of money that goes into campaigns like de Blasio's campaigns, like many of our city council members, a lot of that money comes from police unions. The NYPD has an $11 billion budget, and a lot of that money, especially from the unions, goes to these elected officials so that they have power on their side. De Blasio, he's wishy-washy. What makes a politician a bad politician or a bad elected official? A bad elected official is when they're trying to appease everyone. I'd rather him just take the side of the NYPD fully rather than trying to paint Black Lives Matter signs in front of Trump Tower. He's very performative. He hasn't really done much for the Black community here in New York City, hasn't really done much for this Black Lives Matter movement. Commissioner Shea is a racist. I believe he's a white supremacist. He's had records of complaints and allegations when he was on the force, and now he's the commissioner, and he should immediately resign with the actions that he's done throughout his entire career of being an oppressor. Both of them need to go. I know there's a mayoral race next year in our local elections. There are also 36 city council seats up for election next year out of 51 city council members. Next year we have the opportunity to change the tides of where New York City is going to go in terms of who our elected officials are.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. I guess for context, I should have mentioned that, maybe there will be like a lower third or some text that says context for you, but Warriors in the Garden is a group that you are a founding member of, an activist group, and I know that Warriors in the Garden has been getting a lot of attention. This kind of parlays into, the NYPD itself, particularly around the arrest of Derek. And then I know that someone else from your group was arrested at City Hall at like 5 o'clock in the morning. That was so insane. And Yassine, I know, so many. So I just wanted to ask you like about Warriors so that people who are watching know, and kind of what has the aftermath of those events been for you guys as a legitimate organization with support from legal counsel and stuff like that.
Right. So Warriors in the Garden is a organization that I founded. We're a collective of young activists dedicated to nonviolent protests for legislative change. And we've been organizing protests, marches, and putting out educational content since the first couple of weeks of protesting after the death of George Floyd. We've seen this happen after a lot of the protests in Ferguson. What the police will try to do, what the NYPD will try to do, is they'll try to pick off our organizational leaders, those that have been speaking up against the injustices that exist here in the city. And we saw that with the arrest of Yassine. We saw that with the attempted arrest of Derek. And they exhibit these fear tactics, and they exercise this strength that is just, it just exists to strike fear in those that are organizing against them. And we've seen that here in New York City. We've seen that across the country. We've seen that in history of people that have spoken up against injustice, especially when it comes to criminal injustice. And it's just them trying to, I guess, fearmonger and strike fear in the hearts of people that are standing up against them. However, it's not working. It only gives us more strength to continue doing what we're doing. We are very prepared for what they throw our way. We use technology and social media as a tool to highlight everything that they're doing, and using it in a way where we can share it with people that are watching. We continually chant this in the streets, but we chant, we protect us. It's not the NYPD that has our backs. It's us that have our own backs. In order for us to do that, we need to keep our eyes out and ears open for whatever they throw our way.
Totally. But when you do go out, I mean, there's so much organization involved. And I know that a few of the marches I've been to that have been led by Warriors in the Garden, a list of demands was starting to kind of come together. So I would love to know, like, what are the demands, and how do these demands parlay into your run for city council?
We demand to end qualified immunity. And for those of you that are watching and don't know what qualified immunity is, it's a doctrine that was enacted in 1982 by the Supreme Court. And what it does is it shields federal officials, say politicians or elected officials, as well as law enforcement agents, from being sued and held accountable for their wrongdoings by the people. So, for example, if a police officer beats me up for me jaywalking, and I wanted to sue that officer, I wouldn't be able to sue that officer or the NYPD. That lawsuit would go to the city. And if I won that case and won a settlement in terms of money, that money comes from the city. And when it comes from the city, it comes from our taxpayer dollars.
Right. So there's no
accountability at all.
Well, I mean, forget about accountability. You can't expect people who are like, robot people to have any sense of moral accountability, but an incentive, maybe an incentive not to lose their pension, an incentive to keep their job. There's nothing.
Absolutely. It's and you can tell with the attitude and the energy that they have on the streets. Nothing will happen to me for that's, I guess I'm speaking in like a police point of view. They have this energy that nothing will happen to them for anything that they do.
I mean, it's really easy to say that when you have a gun in a holster on your hip. As soon as that gun is taken away, a lot of things change. You know what I mean? The whole attitude can change when you're not carrying a deadly weapon that you can use with zero accountability.
Exactly. The second demand or still demand that we have that was completely ignored earlier in June is cutting the NYPD's budget by half, at least. They have an $11 billion budget. The city council did, or Corey Johnson and the mayor did a performative action of cutting the budget by $1 million when they were really just moving money around and calling it a budget cut.
A billion, right?
Pardon?
1 million?
1 billion.
Billion with a B.
They cut it from 1 billion, but it wasn't a full cut. They were just moving money from one portion of the NYPD to another sector of the NYPD. And called it a cut when it was only a cut, I guess, in one division of the agency. That's how you trick a lot of people when you have that in headlines. But when you actually look at the policy and the actual numbers behind it, it was extremely performative. I jumped into this race because I was seeing the lack of action that needed to happen with our elected officials, especially when it came to police reform. And when I also saw the money that was going into pockets of our elected officials and seeing that it was coming from police unions, frankly pissed me off. We need people that represent us in office, especially in local office, people that would not be swayed with money from police unions, with money from real estate companies, with money from large corporations. We need people that are seating or sitting in those seats that represent us and are funded by us and are speaking on our behalfs and listening to our demands. This summer really showed me that even though they've been doing this for a bit, but it really showed me that our elected officials do not have our interests in heart. And rather than demanding ideals and values at politicians and elected officials that won't listen, we need to start running ourselves to enter these offices.
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly. It seems like people are really wrapped up in the kind of distraction of national politics, and I realize there are their own issues there, but it's almost like this entire cat fight between the Democrats and the Republicans is really just a distraction from what we should be doing, which is just looking around and seeing what's going on in our own communities.
Absolutely. I say that literally every single time I speak. I'm so tired of the focus on the general election. Yes, it's important. Please vote in every election that exists. But how can we be so pissed off about what's happening on a national level when we don't have our ducks in a row in the city that we live in?
Yeah, and I believe that there's an actual, it's not trickle down. We've been so convinced that everything's trickle down that we've just accepted that as fact, but it's not that way. If you can change it at a community level, that's everything. That's the power. The power is with the people. The masses of people are working together to make change. So I think, city council, it's one of the most important elected positions you could be running for.
Especially in New York City too. Let's set the precedent for the rest of the country. If we're going to be the most diverse city in this country, if not the world, let's set a standard for what equality and representation looks like across all boards.
Is anyone endorsing you?
We're working on endorsements right now. My election is in June of next year. So endorsements do start to come out, a couple months before that. We are working on endorsements. We're building firm foundations within the people that support me, as well as the team that I currently have right now.
Incredible. Okay, so the 36th district is part of Bed-Stuy and Crown Heights?
Yes, it's all of Bed-Stuy and it's North Crown Heights.
Okay. Where, I know you're a New Yorker too, right? Where is this the neighborhood that you're from?
I was born in Park Slope and we moved over to Crown Heights when I was about 10. So I grew up in this neighborhood. I've seen it change for the better and for the worse. But I have a deep connection to the neighborhood and to the community. I'm willing to do this race and to put in the work to benefit my community and benefit the people that have been there, to benefit the Black and brown people that have lived there for decades, and also to represent my city as a whole.
Yeah, well, I'm so glad that you're representing the city. Sorry, we're jumping around a lot. We didn't even get through one question.
Really?
about the demands, because I'm just interrupting you. I'm sorry. I guess what I want to ask is how the demands, so how your demands, is your platform mainly around defunding the police? What else is in your platform?
Well, it goes deeper than just the defunding of the NYPD. Of course, after defunding comes reallocation and reinvestment. Reinvestment is one of the biggest ideologies and philosophies that I have on my platform. I'm someone that's grown up in New York, and especially a neighborhood that's predominantly Black. You hear often that there's not enough money for public education. There's not enough money for public housing. There's not enough money for infrastructure. There's not enough money for public transportation. There is enough money. It's just being used for the wrong reasons. There's no use for armored police vehicles. There's no use for the riot gear that they have for nonviolent protesters. There's no use for the amount of police helicopters that they have. How much is that police, how much is the gas for those helicopters? How much is the maintenance for those helicopters? How much is the training for those helicopters? And to do what? To oppress who? That money needs to go into our education. That money needs to go back into the youth. That money needs to go back into community organizations. There should be no reason for public school teachers to have to pay out of pocket for school supplies at the beginning of the school year when there are police that have AK-47s or machine guns in general. I don't know the exact brand of machine guns that they have. I'm sorry, I'm not a gun nut. But yeah, it's just reinvestment back into our communities, especially the communities that have been distraught from over policing. And there's this rhetoric of Black on Black crime that you hear a lot from the right. But when you look into why that exists, or why gang violence exists, or why gun violence exists, it's because Black people have been in quarantine their entire lives. With redlining and with gerrymandering, they've been put into these districts where there's no access to healthy food, there's no access to proper education, there's no access to clean, sustainable housing, and there's no extracurricular activities for the children to do. They're put into this system and put into this box where they can only resort to violence at some points, and then they're put into the system of slavery, of the prison industrial complex. And I truly believe that the reinvestment within these communities and within our districts and back into the people and back into our youth will help us all grow, as a people and as a city.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I guess it's really just, as a white person, seeing
You're white?
I am, yeah.
I'm kidding.
I'm very patient. The New York always felt like a melting pot.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess that's just wrong.
Mm-hmm.
But it
is a melting pot. It's just that we need representation in office, and people that have our backs, you know what I mean? We are a melting pot. It's just the people that are advocating for us and are representing us and should be speaking on our behalf aren't doing it. And they haven't been doing it for quite a time. A lot of people aren't aware of local elections. A lot of people don't vote in local elections, and that's for a reason. They're quiet for a reason. It's so that people that can accept this money and represent people that are paying for their campaign can step into power rather than those that represent us.
Right. I mean, you essentially, it's not really a democratic I mean, it's a technically democratic process on that level, but that's exactly what I was saying about national politics. It's like, don't say anything about midterm elections or any other thing that's happening, because then we can just kind of maintain the back channeling that goes into people keeping these seats forever, you know.
Exactly.
I was really happy to see kind of the midterm elections this year. You know, the DSA had some candidates that got pushed through, and I don't know. I mean, I feel like I've been banging on the same pot too about, you know, local. Everything has to be local, because, you know, just from a human level, people need to start practicing like collectivist ideas in their real life, and you don't really know what's going on. You don't know what's going on in the world if you don't know what's going on in your community. And just like helping out in the most basic way is such an important step. And I think when you're talking about community organizations getting funding, this is a really interesting time, because I think since COVID happened, the idea of mutual aid has become 100% mainstream. People understand, okay, I'm helping you because it's my responsibility, because we need to like make sure that we have each other's backs. And that the idea of mutual aid kind of replacing the idea of charity is really important, I think, to like changing the narrative. So it's just really cool to see young people, especially young people of color. And I want to also talk about that, like, you know, race and queer identity relating to your activism. The more of this we can clinch in the, you know, in power, we just need to get these like people out.
Exactly.
I don't know what I'm saying.
No, absolutely.
Very passionately about rambling.
All right.
Yeah. So how does yeah, I mean, you've talked.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not only does my race matter, you know, I'm Black. Not only does my queer identity matter, you know, and representation of our elected officials, you know, it's that talk about, you know, race and gender and sexual orientation, but we also need people that ideals and that will represent us actually when they do step into office. And that's something that I'm dedicated to do. You know, I'm very true to who I am, whether it's my actual identity, but also the things that I believe in.
Yep. Thank you. I think we have about 5 minutes.
Okay.
So I just want to ask you one or two more questions.
Okay.
First of all, I want to know, like, how are you kind of mobilizing your run for office? Is it different than your activism with Warriors in the Garden? Are you kind of tapping into the movement there? How are you advocating for people to vote, particularly for you, but in general?
Well, activism and my candidacy are hand in hand. You know, I'm an activist before I'm a candidate for this race. I'm doing both. You know, I am, and with the intention of registering new voters, of educating people about local politics here in New York, advocating for the census, and just, you know, talking to people about how they can get more involved. You know, I have a great team behind me. I have a great support system behind me as well. And, you know, I think we need someone like me, you know, especially young people, especially people that don't think that they have anything to do with politics. I think, when you look at someone like me, or at least listen to what I'm saying, or how I'm doing it, I think it's getting people excited. And that's how you get people to go in and vote for you. That's how you get people to go out and vote in general. You have people excited and inspired by what you're saying and by what you're doing. And I'm hoping that I'm doing that, and I hope I can go the extra mile to inspire other people to not only vote, but to run in these races as well. Across all ages. I just want progressive people, and people that have a lot to say, and people that have important things to say, to be taking that leap of faith, and if they're passionate about a certain thing, and they're dissatisfied with how things are, then they should make that effort and run a race just like mine and win, and we'll win together.
Yeah. Do you see that people that have been attending marches, are young people in particular, are becoming more involved, like on a more organized level with actual politics?
Mm-hmm.
Not the founding members of Warriors in the Garden, but young people who showed up and are now starting to move politically.
Absolutely. We're all registered to vote. It's always something that we advocate for. There is a lot of time, or a decent amount of time between between now and my election. But it's going to be something that I'm going to continue to press. But we are all politically aware, in every aspect. And it's very inspiring to see, just the age that we are, and how active we are in our society. We just need to start going to the polls.
Yeah. So it looks like for a second the internet went out. So I'm going to ask you again about how your race and your queer identity parlay into your activism and your campaign itself.
Right. I mean, my identity is who I am, and I'm running to represent everything that I am, as well as everything that everyone else is. Again, New York City is one of the most diverse cities in the world. We just need proper representation in office, and people that look out for us, not only in my queer identity, but in my race, but in my age. We need all representation in office, and we need advocacy on all fronts. And then I'm going to do that, and I am ready.
Thank you. Okay, so what if you could say one thing to everybody listening, what would it be?
Pay attention to your local elections. Register to vote in the city that you're in. I know a lot of people are especially a lot of people that are transplants here in New York, say that their vote matters back home, and home is California. Register to vote here. Vote in these local elections. Vote to protect the people that you love in the city that you're inhabiting. Vote for me.
That's what I was looking for.
Yeah.
I love it. Okay, yeah. Well, thank you so much again for being here. This is Chi Ossé running for 36th District City Council seat. Is it a seat?
Yes, it is.
Sound like
I also will add, follow me on social media, Ossé 2021, OSSE 2021. And also please donate to our campaign at ossé2021.com. We've outraised all my opponents thus far in a month and a half of fundraising. I am the youngest person in the race, and we're going to kill it, but we need to fundraise. So please support our campaign.
Perfect. Thank you again so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
I'm sure I will see you somewhere.
Amazing.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.